So my name is Truls Krane Meby. I'm a Norwegian, and I'm originally from the northern Norway, from a place called Lofoten. It's a bunch of little islands way in the north, right above the Arctic Circle. And I lived there until I was 19, and then I moved to Oslo. I lived in Oslo for 7 years, and then 1 year in Paris. And then now for the last 4 years, I've been in Berlin. So I'm a writer-director and sometimes editor. I've edited most of my short films either myself or together with someone. And that's me in a nutshell.
Let's have a chat about your film. So I saw on your Vimeo, there's one film that is, let's start from the first one. There's Grip. You did it in 2010. I'd be very interested to know, how did you come up with the idea of making that film?
Well, the film is about this injury prevention program in an institution for mentally unstable people, and I got it from working in an institution just like that, and basically having had to learn those techniques myself, and I thought it was such a very fascinating and interesting environment that isn't portrayed so much in film, and I thought that those techniques were, first of all, just extremely visual, and I thought I could make a story about the difference between training and actually doing the thing you're training for, and how insulated it can be during a training, and how shocking it can be when you actually have to do the thing you've trained for. And in this case, of course, you're basically training to put a mentally unstable person down on the floor 2 against 1 in the in the least harmful way possible, and what you're using is basically martial arts, but you're never supposed to hurt anyone. And there was something so bizarre about learning these techniques where everyone was sort of playing around and being in a completely different mood and mode than what the real situations were like. The real situations could be fucking horrifying, whereas in the room when we were training, everything was just fun and games and playing around. And I thought I could say something about a certain kind of danger that I can see in those kind of techniques, where there's a real potential for doing too much. And I wanted to make a little scene where, a small little rivalry between these two people in the training becomes an exploitation of the techniques. So the main character, he gets a little bit on the nerves of this guy who's done it many times before, and so the guy who's done it many times before, he punishes him a little bit by actually maybe doing things a little bit stronger than he should, and also there's this, on top of that, there's also the lack of seriousness that the main character brings to this. And then at the end, he kind of sees what is actually going to. So it's a lot of things packed into one short, but that was the gist of it, yeah.
How many days of shooting did you have on the film? 2 days of shooting.
Yeah, 2 days of shooting, yeah.
Okay.
So very, very, yeah.
And did you have a budget for that?
We had about, I think it would have been around 3,000 euros.
Okay.
There was a screen competition that I sent my screenplay to a screenplay competition, and then we got 3,000 euros, and then we did it with this. It was an old Sony EX1 camera.
Okay.
With a fucking huge Lotus or Litus adapter in front. It was bigger than the camera, and it was so heavy and so unwieldy that it was just horrifying to work with. And we had it on top of like a really we had it on a jib that we used quite a bit for some of those shots, and the combination was just a little bit horrifying because the camera was so forward heavy. It was really difficult to work with, but I think we managed to get some decent shots out of it. Yeah.
Did you hire professional actors?
No, they're all amateurs.
Okay.
Some of them were in acting school, But mostly, I mean, the trainer, he's just a guy who does that. He actually designed the technique, so he is the actual trainer. And the other ones were either amateur actors or people who wanted to be actors, or yeah, no, or just friends of mine. So it's a good mix we got there. And the guy Christian, who plays the guy who comes in at the end, does this just insane job with his screams in a way that I couldn't have imagined that being. Actually, it was written to be noise and just a lot of racket and a lot of noise. But when we had the trainer there, we started talking. He started talking to me about, we should try to do these screams the way that they can sometimes become when they act out, as one says, the patients. So we tried, and he just filmed so fucking well. It was incredible, and I mean, I think those screams are really in the end what does the film.
Yeah.
It really ends the film in a way that makes you reconsider what you've seen before and what you thought you were seeing. I always wanted it to be a very quiet film, very, very quiet, and then at the end there comes this sort of incredible noise and racket that just cuts through all the quiet and all the playfulness that's been there before and all the lack of seriousness, and then all of a sudden you get this racket that just sort of cuts through everything. And the racket and the noise was just meant to be sort of stumbling around on the outside and even more, hammering against the door. But when we got those screams, it became something so physical, and they really sort of hit you in the body, and yeah, they really made that film something a little bit different than I think it would have been if they hadn't been there.
That was great. So did you edit that film yourself?
Yes.
And
I did edit that one myself.
Okay. And was it your first film, or?
It was my first finished film.
Okay.
I mean, I've done a lot of playing around with film. I think the year before that, I think I have to go back a little, because I'd written a ton of stuff in my early 20s and just written, but never really done so much. When I was in high school, I used to film my friends all the time. I just had like a little pocket camera, and I was filming them all the time, and just whatever it was. And it was a way for me to be creative without really stepping sort of outside my comfort zone. I really I didn't feel personally ready to start playing around with actors and giving directions. I just didn't know how to do those things. But I knew how to operate a camera, and I had a camera that I was lucky enough to it was so small I could put it in my pocket everywhere I went. So I used to bring it all the time, and I took fuck tons of home video of my friends. And I think through that I learned to let go a little bit and look for situations, almost documentarian-like, but still sort of, use the camera to frame it and to find little situations without necessarily going in there and interfering and directing. And I started editing this together into making this big portrait of just us fucking around in high school. But I really tried to make it like do it properly, just really edit it and make it something that will be interesting to watch. I don't know if it's interesting at all to watch for other people than us, but it really helped me to create images, I think, and not to feel like I always had to interfere to make something interesting. And when I came to Oslo, through a friend of a friend, I met some interesting people who were planning to do a feature film, and they were all 19 or 20 years old. And I sort of, through showing them this film that I had, these things that I've edited just for me and my friends, I managed to sort of wiggle my way into that film, and I directed that film. But they did all the acting instructions, so I still was sort of, avoiding the role of actually being a director. But I kind of directed the film's images, I guess, the visuals. So that was kind of my first film, but it was never really properly finished. It was done, and it was sort of, but we never really did anything with it. So it's it's on hard drives somewhere. it was never really done. And after that, I had a long period where I just wrote and tried, desperately to find my own writing voice, and just produced a ton of text until I just became sick and tired and said, right now I just have to make something. And in a year, I think I made 3 shorts that I never finished. I just sort of made 3 in a row, like bum, 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 really quickly, just to get out there and start working actually with actors. And those are they're locked away and nobody will ever see them. Basically, that was what I did basically before that short film.
Okay.
That was my experiences with film before that one. So that was the first one where I really wrote constructively for longer. It was done in a script writing workshop. So I was writing on it in this workshop for about 6 months, and then we got the money, and then we shot the film a few months after that.
So did you go to film school, or did you do different courses?
Yeah, shorter courses. I never went to film school, but this place where I did the workshop was it was like a talent development place in Oslo that I got a connection to, and I went to a lot. It's called Mediefabrikken. They're really good. They're really, really good, and they really helped me quite a bit and championed me, and I went to a lot of directing courses at that place, and just did a week of how to work with actors, or a week about how to work with the camera, or just a day of Steadicam or something. It was just very spread out and very nothing for too long, but I found that I really loved learning in this way, to have a short explosive period and then go out and do something with it, and just to be on your own and take it in your own time. And I feel like I was never in, like, just when I moved away from northern Norway, I was feeling like I had to go to film school, and I was thinking about it, but very quickly I didn't really I pushed that away. I didn't feel like I wanted to. I was afraid of getting too formed, actually, by say a strong teacher or something, or being formed by. I'm not so good in competitive environments, and I think I was afraid that film school might be too competitive for me, and that I wouldn't be able to concentrate on my own development in the way that I wanted to. So I basically just worked in isolation, first with writing, as I said, and after we did this film, and I did these 3 films, and after I did Grep, we also started, me and some friends started doing more of these little things that some became short films, and some things just never became anything, but it was important just to have the camera and just run around in the streets of Oslo and do things and see what became of it. So I always did things, and I always worked, and I always tried to sort of push my own limits a little bit and have my own little film school, but I never went officially to one.
Okay. And what's your approach to lighting?
Oh, good question. Depends from film to film. I think my approach to lighting comes a little bit from my approach to the kind of films that I started out making in general, which are, I would describe as the sort of heightened naturalistic films, where the acting is naturalistic, and the films have a certain observational realist quality, but I hope there's some really strong formal qualities that doesn't make it seem too kitchen sink, and that they feel, I hope they feel cinematic, but they do have some strong roots in naturalism. And that happened actually when I was doing this screenwriting workshop for Grip. There was I had the choice between 2 screenplays to enter into there. I entered into screenplays, and they say you have to choose one. And one screenplay was Grip, and the other one was this really bizarre, surreal story about, it's about a surreal version of the world where everyone's born with a thread coming out of their, like, instead of your umbilical cord, everyone has a thread coming out of their what's it called? The hole in your belly.
Yeah, the
belly button.
Belly button.
Everyone has a thread going to the belly button that goes all the way to their home. So everyone sort of drags this thread around life, and the closer they get to other people, the more sort of the threads intertwine, and there was this whole weird, surreal environment that has really nothing to do with the form and the style that I'm doing right now, and also the short films that I did before that nobody will ever see. They also have more of these surreal elements. So I thought, sort of what I had two roads I could go in this workshop, and I really felt like the thread story was a little bit more what I felt like at that point, but I really felt like I wanted the challenge of working maybe a little bit more properly with actors, and I wanted the challenge of making something that felt very real, and I just wanted to feel what it felt like to try to make something like that. And I decided to do Grip, and through working with Grip, I noticed that I really liked working like that, and I felt the film really worked well, and I wanted to go further into that form. So the next few films was really just trying to push that form further, and I started, and what I noticed then is that I wanted to have things be natural. So that comes back to your lighting question. I wanted to have things that felt like you were looking at something you recognized from life. I didn't want something that felt too
staged
in the lighting. But then what was going on now is, with the projects I'm writing now, more and more surrealism is sneaking its way in.
Okay.
So I'm sort of coming around it again now and incorporating a lot of those things that I used to like so much and still do like so much. But I think I just had to become confident in my own form, and I had to find a formal language that I liked working in, I felt comfortable in, and that I felt that I mastered somewhat. So now that I feel like I know how to do a certain kind of film, I feel like I can allow those elements to sneak in again.
And to experiment with, expand it and build on top of that as well. How do you work with actors? Do you have a certain number of rehearsal days, and how do you direct them, like specifically in terms of directing? What's your style?
It's extremely, I really don't feel like I have a style, and it's very different from actor to actor. I think if I have a style, it's sort of trying to see what each actor needs or what the scene needs, and it's never really something I feel like I could, a style that I can put like a blanket over everything I do. Really not. And I feel like it really is a mix. Some actors you don't really have to say anything, or let's put it this way: when I my scripted features, my scripted shorts, I mean, I think a lot of the sort of a lot of it, so much of it is in the screenplay already. So when we come to the set, ideally, it's more of the only instructions I have to give, if I've cast it correctly, is sort of, a little bit here and a little bit there, and maybe dwell a little bit more on this word and because this and this. But I try not to fill the actors' heads with too many things as we're shooting. I think it's better if we do the talking beforehand, so everyone sort of knows what we're doing, and then when we're shooting, it's mostly just adjustments. Hopefully, I've never been negatively surprised by what an actor brings on set, and I never felt like I had to, like that I had an emergency that I had to fix or anything. And I always try. I think maybe the answer is that a lot of the directing is actually done in the writing and the casting, and on the scripted shorts. But say I had this improv-based project in Oslo going for a few years that was supposed to become a feature, but it's not really moving in any direction now, and it got too chaotic in the end. But it was great to play around with, and there we often just made scenes based on a teeny tiny premise or sometimes not, almost no premise at all, and just knowing two characters and putting them in a room together, and then you talk much more. I feel then you sort of go in and you discuss as you're doing things what's going on, and maybe if this and maybe if that, and you try bigger things. But I think I try to let people be, and I think, but also that's gone, of course. I've had some experiences with that where that's also gone in a negative direction, where I've had someone who needed me to be more present, and they asked for it. So maybe sometimes I'm too taken aback. But I feel like there's something also with, I think there's also something with the form I like to use with these long dwelling takes that actors sort of get to be in their character for a longer stretch. I think a lot of the naturalism maybe comes because you don't do just a close-up and then you cut, and then you go to another one and you cut, but they get to be even for many minutes on end in doing what they're supposed to do, which also creates a natural flow of the walking and what they're supposed to do, like the blocking of the scenes, the way they're moving around is also very much, I try not to force people to do a movement that would feel unnatural, so like I really like to float after them and see how they actually would walk, and sometimes that's even a part of the drama, how they move between the rooms, the houses they're in. I think the naturalism also comes from that. I always feel actually that right before doing a film, the biggest sort of the thing that makes me most nervous is not knowing who's going to play the characters. But the moment we've cast them, I feel so calm. I really feel almost as if then most of the work has been done. And after that, it's really just getting these people together and seeing what their chemistry is like and have fun, really. I mean, I feel like you asked earlier about rehearsals, and except this improv project where we just sort of shot all the time, on none of my shorts have you ever had any rehearsals. It's always been on this good machine gun sound. The kid who plays the lead, he came from vacation on the day we shot that first take, and he literally came right in front of the camera. And I talked to him before, and we had an audition, and I knew he was capable of fantastic things, but it couldn't have been more of a chaotic way to start it. He literally came from a car from the airport and went right in front of the camera, and we didn't have any time to really, make him and the other kid, they'd never met before this, but the way that scene is shot and the way it's sort of set up is that they're playing. It's 4 minutes of them running around the house playing, so they got to know each other through the actual process of shooting. But rehearsals, I wish I had much more of.
So, because you mentioned it, let's go to that to talk a little bit more in depth of that film. Where did that idea come from? And obviously, I assume you wrote the script.
I did, yes. Well, quite simply, it was. It came from actually experiencing the death of my aunt when I was around. I think I was 10 when she died. In the film, he's 8. And I remember it came from this. I remember very clearly in my head after seeing. Like in the film, I also saw my aunt, the dead body of my aunt, and I remember being quite frightened by seeing the dead body of my aunt and the strange thing where her mouth had actually opened. And I remember talking to my best friend about that afterwards and sort of bragging about how weird it was in this sort of braggy, boyish way, and not giving any hint of how much it actually affected me. And I just thought, okay, that could be interesting to do something about, just about how it's hard for kids to really let something like that touch them and go into them, and how they might probably don't understand it completely. And I started reading up a little bit about it, and it seems that when you're around 8, you start figuring out what death is and what death means. And I really just wanted to make a film about a kid who goes through that for the first time. It's really that film together with Worldwide Woven Bodies. they're kind of two parts of a series. I want to make a series of coming of age films set in my hometown, and I want to make them a little bit like, because there's been so many films about the kid who encounters death for the first time, or the kid who struggles with puberty, and I wanted to sort of make my own little variations of that. It's like the new, my own versions of. It's like a good. I wanted to make a cover version almost of this topic. I wanted to make like a good my version of those films, and I think that the rest of that series will be a little bit similar. There will be like one about the first day of school, and one about moving away from home. So they'll have these classic themes, but I want to do them in my own way. And basically.
So how much would you say your films are based in your personal experiences?
Well, the sort of the main idea of every film up until the one that I'll be doing next now has been heavily based on an experience I've had. So they've always started with some experience I've had, and then I've embellished and fictionalized and dramatized and tried to make it properly into a film. And that's been actually for no other reason than it's been easiest for me to speak with some sort of authority and with detail about things that I've gone through myself, because I just haven't felt like I could have taken the proper time to really go into another story and tell it with the kind of detail that I want to have in my films. Now I'm starting to do that, because I feel it's important to get out of your own head a bit. But I really enjoyed the fact that I could talk about these things with authority, because I went through them, and I could sort of come up with details that I think would have been difficult if I just sort of, closed my eyes and tried to imagine something that was way, something that I've never experienced. And but thankfully, as one goes into more and more professional productions, one gets a little bit better of a chance to do proper research and to go into experiences that are not necessarily your own.
What about the production side of it? So how many days of shoot did you have on that one?
That was 5 days of shooting, and we had a couple of days of prepping and just walking around with my photographer and the producers and talking about things. And then 5 days of shooting.
And did you get? I assume you got a budget for that film as well.
Yes, that was. We got 2 grants, one from the Norwegian Film Fund,
Mm-hmm.
and one from the Arts Council of Norway. So we had altogether, I think we had in euros probably around 55,000 euros, I think. So it was quite a big budget. I think it's really important to just do what you said there, to go out and do really. I mean, most of the stuff I've ever done in front of a camera has been, where nobody gets paid, and we're just out there and having fun, with the improv thing I mentioned in Oslo, and with everybody's present as well, we just did it. And the film that's not online that I did before those. And I think that's so important, just to be able to have the camera and do something. And that's how you really find your voice, I think, through playing around like that, and through just testing, really. When you're on the set, even though you have 5 days, and it's really hard to do too experimental things. You can push some boundaries, but it's really hard you can only push them so far, because you do have a story to tell, and whereas when it's you and some friends, you can really do whatever. You really don't owe anyone anything, and I think that's important to have a little bit all the time, to just try out things that don't need to end up as anything.
What camera did you use to shoot that film? The good machine gun sound.
That was an Alexa.
That was on an Alexa. Okay, I see. You had the budget for it. Good.
So I mean, when we could afford the Alexa, then then a lot comes to that. I have like a fantastic cinematographer called Benjamin Loeb, and he's just such a brilliant guy to work with. We think alike about many things.
Okay.
And he's always willing to go a little bit crazy places and try out things. And
okay, let's go to the next film then, the one that I mentioned earlier. So Everybody's Present. I watched it today.
Right.
Great film, really. I connected, similar experience. Tell me about that film. Where did the idea come from, and screenplay, the pre-production side of it?
Well, the idea I remember was really just. I remember it was some Sunday, and I was really hungover, and I think I'd done something weird the day before, and I was kind of nervous. I remember lying on a friend's couch and just like writing and scribbling things and trying not to think about what I'd done the day before. And I remember I was a little bit frustrated because I'd just gotten a no from the grants people the first time we applied for Worldwide Woven Bodies. So all of a sudden we had planned to shoot it that summer, and all of a sudden there was no plan for that happening. And I was sort of creatively frustrated and needed to do something quick. And I just remember scribbling down a ton of ideas and things that could be interesting. And I remember one of the first images that came to me where I felt like this could be something is I drew that little image of the hand where you see the
monitor.
See the laptop,
yeah.
This just like a completely flat thing, and then the hand coming in touching it. And there was something, I felt there was something so potent about, you know, a hand touching this completely flat thing as if it was something of substance. You know, we started caressing it in some way, and I just felt like that was such a beautiful and simple and clear metaphor for the strangeness of digital communication and how intimate and at the same time distant it can be. And it was really quite simply just that. I just wanted to show how intimate and distant it can be at the same time. And that was almost that could almost have been enough. But I went home and I wrote down a quick little text, which was basically just a couple talking, boring things back and forth, making it obvious that one had just moved away, and then I just sort of made that evolve just into cybersex, and then I just stopped it there, and I didn't want to think in it anymore about what was going to happen here, because I knew that if I got two actors. I had two actors in mind pretty rapidly that I just adore. They're beautiful people, the both of them, and they're very free in their acting and very creative in their acting. And they're both a little bit sort of, they have this sort of wonderful jumpy sort of electric thing about the way they act, which I just think is wonderful. But they'd never met. And I knew that if I just got them in the same room and got them acting in a thing together, I just pictured this energy being really wonderful to watch. So I contacted them, and I was in Berlin at this point, so I couldn't really meet up with them. They were both in Oslo. So I called them and asked if they could be up for this, and they said yes. And I got them to meet sort of over a coffee while I was in Berlin. So I knew that they'd met and gotten along. And then I went for like, I think it was just a few days. I went to Oslo. I got him in a room, and she is actually at home. She's not even remotely close to where we are, so they're actually Skyping. And I really just let them go at it. And we shot mostly, I think we shot 2 or maybe 3 20-minute takes where we just let the camera roll while they're basically just Skyping and cybersexing and picking up all these crazy details.
So you shot first the scenes without them actually meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
So they had met once, but I had not met them while they met. So they had just met each other. I knew they got along. And then it came to Oslo, and then I I only actually met him before we started shooting. There was some crazy scheduling things, so we basically just sort of crammed everything in. It was really intense, and that was it. No rehearsal, no nothing. Every time you hear like like the Skype fucking something up, that was actually Skype fucking up. Like the little beeps and the cracking of the voice, everything happened. So it was so horribly planned, or perfectly planned for what it was supposed to be. You know, it was just basically, I just wanted them to Skype and to see how that was, and I had a feeling that their chemistry would work well on screen together, and it does wonderfully, I think, and that was that was kind of it. But there's another aspect to this that needs to be said as well, and that's after this, I took the material home and I started looking at it, and I started becoming. It was so difficult for me in the beginning to see how this would work, all fit together, because it was a lot of material, and there were both these huge improvs and a lot of little pickups we did here and there. But I really didn't. It was difficult to figure out how one could make a thing out of it. So I started becoming a little paranoid about this scene being able to carry the film. So I expanded on the film. I expanded on the screenplay and wrote maybe 4, 5, 6 other scenes that I then went to Oslo over the next few months and did. So there's basically most of the film is not in the film now. Maybe, a third of what the film was supposed to be is in there. But as I started editing, I started noticing that that one scene is the best thing and the most interesting thing. And if I start putting all the other stuff in there, it's going to be distracting more than anything. So in the end, the more I edited, the more I noticed that the scene could really stand on its own 2 feet, and that's what happened in the end, basically.
And you shot it. So you said that you shot it in one day. All the online.
All the Skype stuff, everything that's in the film now is from the same day, except that one part where he's dancing, like slow dancing, and of course the beginning as well. That came very late.
Mm-hmm.
So the beginning when they're just hugging, that's one day. That was also just one long 20-minute take where I'm standing with the, that was shot on a 5D, I think. So I'm holding the 5D like on a tripod, and then I'm just holding like the microphone down like this. That was just me in the hallway, and the second scene I think was the one where he's dancing was something similar, and the rest was done by another photographer.
Okay, so this.
But that was really just chaotic little shoot where we did that was zero money and just running around and carrying the equipment, and
in that case you didn't apply for grants, you just invested your own money basically.
Yeah, basically. And it's always been really important to me, even though like I always try to apply for the grants, but to always have the possibility to do other things as well. I really, really, really don't want to be dependent on the grants. It gives me a bad feeling to think that you have to get permission from somebody to make a film.
Yeah, somebody.
Doesn't make any sense. I want to be as free as a writer to make my films. A writer only needs a pen and a piece of paper and his own brain, and I want to have that same kind of freedom. I want to be able to just grab a camera and grab another person, and then we go and do something. And I really like having that feeling, and I often, because I often get my grant applications often get declined,
mm-hmm.
and whenever I get whenever they get declined, I get like, well, fuck you guys, I'm going to go out and do something on my own now. Try to use that energy in a positive way instead of sitting and making it, letting it go too much in on you. So this film was a product of that, definitely. Yeah.
There's something I wanted to pick up on when you said it, and it kind of like resonated with me as well, is that when you applied for grants, it's whether they choose you or not, it feels a little bit that they acknowledge the fact that yes, it's good enough, no, it's not. Whereas in terms of short films, etc., it's a lot about improvisation, it's a lot about experimentation, it's a lot about trying out, because you're making, in the end of the day, something that won't really make money. You're not making a feature that a TV will buy. And I feel like that aspect is a little bit missing, but technology is kind of like allowing us to implement, is the fact that thanks to technology we can make films for very little, and we don't
Yes.
need to rely on other people saying yes, it's good enough, go and make it. Let's go on to your last film, Worldwide Woven Bodies. How long was the script that you wrote for it? How many pages of script did you have? Something very interesting is that your films have very little dialogue. So I'm really interested in this proportion of how much is the script and how much is in the end the film, because usually they say 1 page is 1 minute, but actually in terms of your films, I don't know. Tell me.
No, not really. I mean, if the first, I mean, a lot of stuff has been cut. So I think in the end, actually, maybe it ended up being a little bit like that. I think the screenplay maybe was around 16, 17 pages.
Okay.
The film is 16 minutes. But I think the first assembly of the film we had was around 20 minutes or something.
Okay.
Where everything was in there and everything was laid out and nothing was cut. And of course, I also have these long takes, and that doesn't quite show in the screenplay either. You just say, hold for a long time, and then that's it. What was the question again?
So the how long you've answered it. It was how long was the screenplay that you wrote? So it was you said 16, 17 pages, right? More or less. Yeah. Okay. And so how many days? How did you go about the? I think you mentioned it earlier. You got a grant for this one.
Yes, it's the same budget, the same amount as Good Machine Gun Sound, actually. Okay. And the same amount of days too. So we had 5 days on this one as well.
Okay. So 5 days. And so you obviously you always work with the same cinematographer?
Yes, except for everybody's. I mean, not always actually. We started working at Good Machine Gun Sound.
Okay.
And I actually shot. I shot Everybody's Present before Good Machine Gun Sound. So every film I made since, every film, 2 films, Good Machine Gun Sound and Worldwide Woven Bodies have the same cinematographer, and I'm going to keep using him now for the future ones as well.
Yeah. Okay. So that was the productions. And what camera did you use for this one?
That was a 35mm actually.
Okay.
So that was.
It did feel like that.
Arri camera, yeah.
Okay, it did feel like that, especially because you had to recreate kind of like the 90s, and I loved it. When I heard the modem, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. and the pages loading really slowly. That was like, come on. That was brilliant.
I mean, that was actually, I remember the sound was actually one of the things that really made me sort of giddy to work on this project, because I for a long time I wanted to make something about when the internet came, about when the internet came, and I always felt like I could use that sound to sort of convey some really interesting and strange and surreal mental spaces, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like first of all, I mean, everyone who hears that sound is immediately back there, but also it's so weird, it's so strange. It really makes you feel like when you put that sound over, the kid actor, and he's looking frustrated at the screen, deleting the searches and everything, it really makes it seem quite disturbing, and you really get a sense of his frustration and his confusion, and that sound is so odd and strange, and really, it sounds like some piece of avant-garde music, and it's really beautiful, and you can really get a sense of it, like a strange mental space by using it. And I felt like, when I have that, I can find other things with the early internet that I can use to do the same thing, like slow loading and all these other aspects of it.
Yeah. That was absolutely brilliant. And so And then it took you, I'm guessing, because obviously you shot it on 35 millimeter, the edit side of it, how did you go about it?
Just as any other film, we got from the lab. We just got ProRes files from
Perfect.
the lab.
Okay, yeah,
so
that's how
I did it on my Mac and Final Cut 7, just as everything else. And then we sent an XML of the edit to the lab, and then we got. No, wait a second. No, we got all the raw files plus the ProRes files. Mm-hmm. So basically what happened was, once the edit was done, I sent an XML to the grader, and then he fixed the... Mm-hmm. I was editing on ProRes files, but of course the other files, the real raw files were not handled by me on my very not so alive MacBook Pro. Couldn't even open one if we tried.
Yeah. What are you working on now? What's your next project?
The next project, we also got a few grants now to do, and we'll be doing it in April. It's about a young Syrian refugee who has, also in northern Norway, in the same town as Worldwide Woven Bodies and Good Machine Gun Sound, and he has to help his family cross the border from Serbia to Hungary over the mobile phone, basically. So it's another film about mass communication in a way, just like Everybody's Present and Worldwide Woven Bodies. Essentially, and we follow him really closely as he tries to help his family cross the border.
So he's got obviously access to internet and all the technology here, and then he's trying, and they've got the limitations of probably battery life, phone connection, etc., etc.
Essentially, well, the drama is actually more that so the family was supposed to be taken over over the border by human smugglers. It's based on a true story. So the family was supposed to be taken over the border by human smugglers, but now the smugglers demand 3 times as much money as they said before, and our main character is the son of...
Wait a second.
Trying to cross the border, and he had organized the entire thing because he had done the whole escape himself and ended up in northern Norway. So he'd organized for himself the smuggling, like the human smugglers, from Syria to Istanbul to Greece and then up through the Balkans, and eventually he got all the way to Norway, where he was arrested. He got asylum and then sent up north. And then he sort of plans the same escape for his family, and he earns some money working up in the north and sends it down so that they can afford to go. But there was no way they could afford 3 times as much money as
of course.
Now the smugglers demanded. So basically, his problem is that it's not necessarily that he actually has to physically guide them across the border, but he has to get another smuggler that will take him across the border. So he has to contact all the smugglers he knows, and then all his friends, and then get contacts from them. So he sort of, through this one intimate little situation in a little fishing village of 4,000 people in northern Norway, you get this sort of strange background of all of Europe sort of being activated by this guy calling to get someone to help his family cross the border safely. Mm-hmm. So that's basically that.
When are you planning to shoot it?
When?
When, yeah.
April.
April, okay. So you've got almost everything ready.
Everything is, we're doing the first auditions tomorrow, actually.
Okay.
So that will be very exciting. And then if that works out, we'll be doing some auditions. It's up in the north, so I won't be there. But if some of those look interesting, I'll be meeting them when I go up there now in a few weeks. And then if they work out, then I can again be calm, because then we've cast the film, and then I feel like after the work has been, and the rest is fun. And then literally we could have, the moment we cast the film, I could be ready to do it any day. But there are everyone's schedule has to fit, and April was the first sort of pocket of time where we could have again 5 days to shoot it. So
And
yeah, that's.
so apart from the location up in the north in Norway, have you got other locations in different places?
No, that film will be all from his point of view. So we
Okay,
only see his side of the conversation through the
perfect.
entire thing. So we sort of the visual concept for the film is that we want to give an impression of sort of how digital means, a little bit like Everybody's Present, how digital technology makes it possible for you to be sort of everywhere and nowhere at the same time, and how frustrating and strange it feels for him to be connected to so many people but not really able to do anything about the situation. And we want to convey that through many different visual means.
Yeah. The main one being the fact that you can't really, so that you are connected, but you can't really see anything about them.
Yes, or do anything, or it's sort of a big illusion that
Yeah.
he tries to help them, but really it's just an impossible situation, and he's just sort of banging his head against this digital wall, and that's a bit what we want to try to convey.
Okay. I'll ask you another thing that I'm kind of like, many times I struggle with. The thing that I'm struggling with is always an ending, because I don't want to come across as moralistic and having a certain, idea about things. How do you go about it as a writer?
That's difficult. Sometimes I feel like I am moralistic, and I really try to not be, and I try to avoid it. And sometimes some things just kind of write themselves, and you don't really know why they ended up like that. Some things happen in the editing. Sometimes I feel like it's good to, if you
because I noticed it
if
in
you
your.
don't try to know everything about your film yourself, maybe I feel, because sometimes with me I'm excited but not quite knowing why exactly it ends where it ends, but it feels right somehow, but maybe I can't express it so clearly with words, but it just so it feels right.
Because I think one of the secrets to make a film feel real and less Hollywood like is the fact that you don't have a certain proper ending, so that we have the feeling that they are still there, that their life continues. We just peeked into their existence, but they are still there after the film. That kind of like. Okay.
I like that very much. Yeah, I like that very much. I say, and sometimes you can get that just by cutting away a little bit earlier than people would have expected.
Yeah.
Like before you get like a marked ending, you just cut to black.
Yeah.
And that I like quite a bit, and it really is difficult. I feel like if one sort of did the job, the ending is never really maybe about purely the ending, but it's about all the questions that are still remaining from the entire film. It's not, if you sort of, if you never set about answering every single question and don't end on an answer. No, I don't really know. I don't really know how to answer that question, because I think it's a little bit different from film to film. I'm certainly always very unsure about how to do it. I think one way maybe to make things not so statementy sometimes is to that you're not sort of ending it right away. It's not like that sort of the big, where the crises have happened, where he sort of is run away from his girlfriend and he's lost his job, and then you kind of end it. But you let him have a little moment there for himself, where you sort of go a little bit beyond the plot. Where it's not all about wrapping up the plot thing, but it goes on a little bit more, and you see him live a little bit more. It's something that isn't necessarily only plot based, but you get to see him, like you said, prepare it, and you see a little bit more of the life of it. And I think then you maybe, I don't know, but I think that sounds.
I'm always jealous when I see work like, for example, yours. You know what you want to talk about, and you know what kind of stories you want to tell. Then obviously you find out how, but your films have a similar flavor to them.
Well, thank you. And it's always, I'm still, searching for whatever I want to do, and now especially the transition into features is really tough. I feel like I'm always negotiating my own style and my own voice, and I don't know if that's ever going to disappear. I think there's always going to be a lot of questioning if what you're doing is right, and I certainly do that every single day. Wonder if this is the right direction or that's the right direction, and even though things look maybe and feel unified in the end, it's still a struggle. So I think it's always going to be a little bit of a struggle to figure out how one wants to do things, even though one sort of has made things that kind of look a little bit like each other and feel like each other.
How much do you take, because you mentioned the features, how much do you take into account the marketability of a film?
Difficult to say. I mean, the one I'm writing now, I'm trying to write a feature that's also set when the internet comes, but it's not the same story as What Do I Hope in Bodies, and I'm trying to just keep a completely open mind about that. But of course, it's difficult. Those thoughts, they kind of sneak in automatically.
Yeah, but how much do you think in the process of writing of a character being more or less likable by the audience or by a certain audience, or like, do you think about a specific genre that that this one sells better than the other one, therefore maybe I should be writing more on this tone, or you just have your style and you like, you know what I mean? It's a little bit what I call the difference between a filmmaker and an author.
Yeah, for sure. I know what you mean, and I've had a lot of those doubts, and they kind of come automatically for me. They sort of sneak in, like, is this, will I be able to do this even, and will I be able to do that, and how is that going to be? But I find that whenever I don't listen to myself, I get deeply unhappy when I write. I don't like what I write. I mean, if I try to write something formulaic or follow a screenplay, manual or something, it just doesn't work, and that's because I don't know how to write like that, quite simply, and I don't like the stuff I write when I write like that, and I think the only way I can sort of write good is if I don't really do that, but it's a struggle to find your own voice in features, because it feels like a different thing than for shorts, but I mean, it's the next struggle.
Yeah,
it's the one that's going on right now, actually.
It's an incredible.
Trying to figure, because of course, with features, it's a much more commercial world or even shorts are not commercial at all, and you have to try to block out those things. I have to, at least. Of course, other people make masterworks and can do that in a commercial field, then maybe some of my stuff will be commercial as well. I don't know, but I think when I write it, I have to write something that I would like to see, and then hopefully someone else also would like to see it.
I've got one more question that friend of mine that I co-directed the other film, he asked me to ask you. So basically, he would like to know whether there are and who are the directors that you are inspired by. Like, who do you look up to? Where you take your inspiration from, whether you did or not.
Yeah, no, I'm inspired by many things, and by inspiration, it's not necessarily stuff that you can probably see in the films, but stuff. They're mostly the people who make me want to push a little bit more and do interesting things, and the one that's sort of always been there quite heavily has been P.T. Anderson, and but I'm a huge fan of Cassavetes and Uppkjøtt på en vei setter kul, Claire Denis, Haneke, Pasolini.
So Italian neorealism.
But also Pixar, and and
Yeah.
I get inspired by so many different things. I think I have a very broad taste, so it's everything between Pixar and Pasolini.
Okay. That's quite a lot
Maybe
indeed.
it's a cheating answer, but that's a little bit.
Yeah. What's your favorite film of 2016?
Oh, if you ask me in 2 weeks, I'm sure it's gonna be Tony Adman. But right now,
Which one?
Probably Tony Adman. I've heard so much about it, but I haven't
Really?
seen it.
I don't. What?
So when I see it, I think it's gonna be probably quite fantastic. But for now, that's a damn good question. I have to think really hard about it. What is my favorite film of 2016?
Have you ever thought about it that whenever you talk about films, you can never remember like what is it about it? It's like so weird.
I really
like even
it's really
no,
odd.
I can remember the last film that I watched that was pretty like the obviously there's also the expectation that you have and then the what is the actual film. But you know the latest one by written by J.K. Rowling, the one that wrote the Harry Potter. The one about the latest one that just came out basically. Was surprisingly good comparing to the Harry Potter films that I'm not a big fan of.
I completely agree. I was insanely entertained when I saw that film.
Yeah.
I really felt like, but I think it was because it was written for the screen. You know, the Harry Potter films, you always felt like they didn't feel like films. You know, they were just sort of these weird lumps that were sort of like bumbling along very awkwardly. They didn't feel like films, but this one was just bam, 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 bam. It was really snappy and entertaining. I really loved it actually.
Yeah.
That was a good, really good entertainment.
Mm-mm. I found very interesting the film Sicario.
Yeah, that's also really good. I really enjoyed
very
it. I haven't
interesting
seen any
feel.
other Villeneuve films, but have you seen Arrival yet? I'm probably going to see that tomorrow.
Arrival, I haven't seen it. I really want to watch it. Yes, apparently it has a very high score on IMDb, and apparently it's a very good film.
It looks
definitely. Have you seen the one about AI? What's the name? With the actress, she's amazing. I want her in one of my films.
Oh yeah.
She's
Machina.
Ex Machina. Yeah.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, you haven't? Great film.
No, sadly not, but I should.
Yeah. What about TV series? Are you watching any?
Which one? TV series? Not regularly. I'm actually really bad at keeping up with shows. I watched the first season of Fargo not too long ago.
Okay.
It was okay. It was really good. It was okay. It was really good. No, I really liked it. It was really tense, and Billy Bob Thornton has an incredible character in that series. Before that, the longest show I paid attention to was Mad Men. I really liked it. But now I'm kind of off the series bandwagon, I have to say. I find it hard to really start because I'm afraid to have something that that just takes up so much time.
Yeah.
I really would rather actually. I'm just afraid to, like, every time I have an hour, okay, I'll put on a show. But I kind of like. Yeah, I don't know. I'm afraid actually. I'm afraid to get addicted.
I like having I'm very very active, like very active. I do loads of things, and I like having time where watching something that is just to watch, just time, completely without a purpose. You know what I mean? Without I'm doing this because of this and this. I think that mental space. I find it useful. And on the other hand, I find fascinating TV series because the way they tell the story is stretched in time. So you have an answer to a question in episode 9 or episode 4, and you have to connect and you think more. Your spatial thinking is much wider. And I found one of the most brilliant TV series. It's not too long because it's only one series now, but it's Westworld, just to go back on artificial intelligence.
I've heard really good things about it.
it's just brilliant. Like some things, the way they connect things that you didn't, I was like, oh shit. It's very good script writing. I'm sure those guys have like 20, 30 excellent award nominated script writers, because they understand the value of, you know, of how important it is, the pre-production side. Whereas when you're young, a filmmaker, you just want to go and shoot because it's exciting, and you don't really pay attention so much in pre-production. At least that was for me. For you, probably it's different, because you were born as a writer director, in the sense that that's where you started from, right? You started from writing, so for you it was natural. Whereas for a lot of filmmakers, people that go to film school, you know, they study films, etc. They what they love is the moment when you create, being on set with cameras, with people, and you know, all this stuff. Whereas the film, you make it in pre-production, and when you discussed that, I found it brilliant. So awesome.
I'm gonna watch it over Christmas.
Do it's nice. Yeah, if you find some time. Cool. Thank you very much for your time. Hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been a great talk.
Thank you. I'll send you the link to our film, and looking forward to chatting again soon. Take care. Have a nice evening.
Very much. I'll send you a link to my shorts.
Please do.
You can edit them in as well.
Oh yes, please do. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.